Thank you very much, and we thank the panelists who came. They saved us a lot of time. Hamuna deni yetu. Unajua kuna deni ya pesa na kuna deni ya saa. So here we are going to count the people ambao watatuacha na deni ya saa. We are on a time budget, and our next speaker has promised ataki deni. Alikuwa na 30 minutes, lakini amesema atafanya 10 to 15. Our in-house economics professor. So I want us to, I'm putting this up for him because keynote haizi fanyiwa hapa hadharani. It has to be done up there. We have paid for it. So as we make the stage for our keynote address, I want to introduce our keynote speaker. I know he must have been asked to do this. Diana, ulimtumia message sangapi kuja kufanya keynote? Asubuhi ama ilikuwa kwa studio? I know you were both somewhere this morning. I know that is where the request was made, and we changed the program quickly, and we're happy to do so because who else to speak to the people than Dr. Abraham Rugo? As I said earlier, I've known him for many years. When I say I have 20 years experience, he says he has 19. Because I'm the one who welcomed him to come into the university as a fresher. Kama mtu anataka kujua kama nilienda shule, mwende muongee na Abraham Rugo. He saw me going to class. But Dr. Rugo is the Executive Director of Budgeting Hub, a leading organization advancing transparency, accountability, and citizen participation in Kenya's public budgeting processes. He holds a PhD and a master's degree in public management from the University of Potsdam, Germany. He has years of experience in public finance, governance, and devolution. And as we have had him speak over time without number, we can tell that he's committed to promoting homegrown solutions that empower citizens and enhance equitable management of public resources for sustainable development. So who else better than Dr. Rugo to speak to us on a day where we want to co-create solutions to recover our country from the chains of debt? Karibu sana Daktari. Kana, please do that for Daktari, please.
Baba ameshalipa deni. So Daktari karibu sana. Karabanda. Karabanda for Daktari. Karabanda. Karabanda. Ya Daktari. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much. I consider myself mkulima mdogo. It's such a joy for me to come and address all of us. Given my height, I actually wasn't aware the hall is all full. And if you've laughed, I've just earned my coffee. And you're still laughing, you know. So thanks, Diana, for what you did. Malipo ni hapa duniani, and you shall pay you. It's also a joy for me to be here to speak to us, also in the presence of my colleagues. Cuba and John should be somewhere here. Please just, yeah. Those are my two colleagues from Budgeting Hub. I'm sure you know all of them. It's really at a time when we all are asking ourselves hard questions of what do we do with our country. Now, it was a joy to listen to the colleague from World Bank. I think he stepped out. And as one who studied in Germany for my master's and my PhD, I know it too well that a people can rebuild their country. From the most corrupt police forces to the most efficient police services. When I arrived in Germany, one of the first things we were told is that if you have any problem, stop the policeman next to you or policewoman and tell them. And even if you don't know where you are going, they can take you there. Now you can see the Kenyans in us thinking, I stop like willingly, I stop a police man, you know, hiyo ni kama kujipeana. And so, I've been asked to speak about how do we co-create solutions for Kenya's debt recovery and our economic justice. And I just want to start by saying that public debt is yours, whether you are involved in its procurement or not. It's your money. Public debt is future tax. and that tax will have to be paid. The Constitution in Article 201 says that the burdens and the benefits of public debt shall be shared between the current and future generations. And therefore, the first question I want to ask, are we being fair to the future generation, and are we being fair to the current generation as far as the benefits are concerned and the costs are concerned? But I want to start by saying, and I'll speak only 3 points and I'll be done, that first we must rethink the size and role of government in our economy. A lot has been said this morning, but I want to start there. And recently, I was looking at the size of our government, and it surprised me just how big we have become. Because we have, we have so many institutions that we have established that basically beg the question, do we need all of them? I noticed that we have 78 commercial state corporations. We have 75 funds. The executive agency has 82 institutions. What we call semi-autonomous government agencies, there are 37 of them. We have the commissions, independent offices, 18 of them. We have political parties that are, at that point, basically were functional, 46 of them. I understand there are 84 now. We have 62 technical training institutions. We have another, we have 62 ministries and departments and agencies. So all those ones that have a principal secretary. The regulatory state corporations, we have another 63. All those are government institutions. And therefore, we need to ask ourselves, when you look at these institutions that I have just mentioned, a lot of them are doing things that our private sector should be doing, are multiplying, are the ones who are responsible for our biggest part of debt. In this discussion, we have not even talked about contingent liabilities. State corporations alone have exposed us to a debt risk of about 2.66 trillion. Those are state corporations alone. When you think about pending bills that were spoken about earlier, they are the ones that are responsible for most of those. And therefore, we need to ask ourselves, do we need government everywhere? Because the reason why we are issuing a treasury bill and a treasury bond almost every other week is basically to keep these institutions afloat. I am aware that there are times when the government has to issue a treasury bill to be able to transfer money to county governments. In other words, we have to borrow. It's like you who is a parent, and every time children ask for lunch, you have to go and borrow from your neighbor because you do not have. But the fundamental challenge to debt management in Kenya is that we are unable to connect our debt decisions to our socio-economic outcomes. What do I mean? Debt is procured for purposes of being able to provide a certain service. The reason why you borrow, you and I borrow, at least I borrow because I do not have the money to provide for myself something for that day. Now, we are told that you borrow for things that you can invest in. Of course, I know there is a generation that believes pia, unaweza borrow, ujipe raha mwenyewe. But the reason why we borrow as a country is to be able to provide these public services. And the question is, are we able to connect our outcomes in education, in agriculture, in healthcare, in infrastructure, to the amount of debt that we have procured? And it's clear that public debt is no longer just a budget financing decision to fill the deficit. It is not a purely financial matter. It is an enabler that has governance implications, that has livelihoods implications, that basically has the entire sustainability of the country in place. And today we are in a situation where debt decisions determine whether businesses have enough credit to grow or they die. Interest rates by government have gone down up to 8%. But interest rates for you and I in the same bank are at a range of 16%, fluctuating. In other words, it simply means that government is borrowing more cheaply. But citizens are not necessarily getting more credit for their businesses. And this explains perhaps why 40% of us, 4 of every 10 here, are poor and are unable to feed themselves. Our research at Budget Hub has shown us that at every time you have a 1% increase in the debt stock, in the amount of debt we have, you decrease public spending by negative 1.2%, you decrease education spending by negative 2.4%, and social protection by 3.6%. In other words, every amount you take and you have to pay back, you have to give up something. There's an opportunity cost. And that is something that I think we need to think about. And therefore, we need to start seeing public debt from this broader perspective and answer two specific questions. One, what exactly does public debt do for us in the long term? What are the equity questions? What are the distributional questions? A study we did a few years back showed that places that had, if you had water in your area, you had higher chances of getting more water projects. And if you have a road and better road network in your area, you had a higher chance of getting more roads in that general area. In other words, the equity questions about distribution of these projects needs to be answered. But secondly, who is benefiting from public debt? These are questions I've said of public equity. Because we all pay debt, do all of us benefit equally? And the question of debt distribution. I go to my second point, that the quality of our debt decisions needs to improve. At the bottom of all our struggles right now is that decisions are being made. But how are they being made? Now, we realize actually there's debt restructuring going on, by the way. There's been discussions of trying to do debt swaps, trying to actually make sure that we buy back, our payments of Eurobond that are coming to maturity into the future now. In other words, we are trying to make some attempts. The question is, what about in the domestic market where we face the highest risk exposure? Well, the efforts are long overdue. I mean, when we commend these attempts, like for instance, what I've just talked about, there are three questions that we need to ask about debt and how we make decisions. First of all, is that debt decisions need to involve more stakeholders. And that's why we are here in this room today. The National Treasury and Parliament cannot be the sole decision makers of how our debt goes. There is technical strength within civil society and independent offices that can help to design these decisions, and citizen participation cannot be wished away. Secondly, we need to be clear on what is a debt decision and what is not. For example, we have to contend with the question of whether securitization and pending bills. What is securitization? Securitization basically is where you take your current incomes, as is the case right now with the fuel levy, you mortgage it. In other words, you take a loan for future payments. So right now, all that was not happening when others were speaking. I'm safe. So right now, the cost of fuel at the pump has gone up, not because you're getting more fuel, but because we have securitized the road maintenance levy fund. There's a 7 shillings that has gone up there. And therefore, what about pending bills? Are they debt questions? And what do we do about those decisions? Because they have huge implications into the future. And as I said, it is not just the implications of the country, but also of households. But thirdly, it is time for us to model debt decisions for ourselves. I know there are models by IMF, there are models by the World Bank, there are models, but everybody does their models that benefits them. As a country, have we done our own modeling? And I say this because I know there are students in the room, there are tech guys in the room. Can we actually start modeling on what are the implications of different debt decisions, different debt obligations? For instance, if today you are to restructure the local market in terms of debt, what does that do to SACCOs, where a majority of Kenyans have their savings? What does that do to banks in Kenya? What does that do to chamas? And then finally, we need to plan better for future statutory costs that will remain a fast charge in our PFM system. Allow me to bring this question, that we have a pensions question that we are not considering as public debt. If you ask me, pensions is debt. Why? Because until we started the contributory scheme in public service, government was paying for pensioners. As of the claims that we have processed, and I say we because we are the country, as of the claims that have been processed, we are now this year paying about 200 billion Kenya shillings. Conservatory figures show that the total pensions claim is another 2 trillion Kenya shillings. That's why we are taking 3 years, sometimes 5 years, to process pension claims. I'm sure all of you have a pensioner who has been lining up in one of the government offices trying to follow their file. Now, if this is not important, we need to look at other countries like France. So you know the crisis that is in France with pensions. In Kenya, President Kibaki was, I'm not sure he was clever or he was cunning, because he opted to push the retirement age to 60. Why? We didn't push it to 60 because we love our old people. We had no money to pay them. Now we have pushed it to 65. But what does that do to the younger people who need to come? The protests in Paris, actually, a couple of months ago that ran, and there were rats everywhere, had to do with pension. And what is the problem? 60% of their money is now going to deal with pensions, and they do not know what to do. Now, the problem with pensioners is that they cannot unionize. They are our grandfathers and our grandmothers. They are our parents. They cannot come to the streets like Gen Zs. Who will fight for them? And therefore, I think this is a critical area that we must prioritize, because this is what runs the rural economy. It is the retired teachers, military officers, police officers, and it's critical to consider. Finally, what then? 3 things. 1, I think it is time to build and test new ideas. I do not think that we have capitalized enough on locally available resources. Our cooperative movement is holding billions of shillings. They buy bonds, but what if we incentivize them to even think of things like education bonds at a lower interest rate that goes straight to provide education services? Because there's a lot of money. Where do I know there's money? Every time a bond has been floated the last 2-3 weeks, it's been oversubscribed. Which means there is money. And all of us are waiting for dividends in our SACCOs. At least those of us who are in SACCOs. Maybe I'm pained because the dividend last year was very bad. Secondly, I think it is time to go to court and call out odious debt and refuse to pay. Now, that's not just populist. In Mozambique, they actually went to court. You know the case. They went to court, and the court ruled that some of this debt must not be paid because they are sovereign. Yes, the people who took them bound all of us, but if there are debts that, and you remember the list that Mheshimiwa Karoli read it before, debt that never got to what it's supposed to do. Because, my friends, if you invested 12 trillion, I want you to think about it this way. Our economy is about 16 trillion and 19, between 16 and 19 trillion, depending on who you talk to. Now, that's like 16 shillings. Now, if 16 shillings is all you earn, and then I come randomly and give you 12 shillings, hello? I have more than doubled your salary. There are 2 things that are likely to happen. 1, you are either going to go big and invest, or you'll be partying everywhere. I don't know the case of Kenya, where we are big in investing or partying everywhere. Finally, we must roll our sleeves to build our Kenya. This responsibility of building is not for some chosen few, young people, old people who work in public finance. It is for all of us. And the question is, what are you doing in the space where you are? We talk, we want integrity, but is integrity for those guys? Not for me. We want a corruption-free country, but corruption-free is for those guys? Not me. Because if tomorrow you are the person responsible for that state corporation, will you bring it to profitability or will you sink it further? If tomorrow you are the MCA in that county, will you be among the first guys wanting to go to Dubai, to do a benchmarking on how to do livestock farming? Even the audacity of that thought is scary. Because every coin we have must be counted, and every of those coins must count. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Arms. Auna deni yetu. You used the time well. You may have gone maybe overboard by 2 or so minutes, but we'll sort it out with coffee outside there. Yeah, but thank you very much. Tumembewa hatulipi audience? Yeah, hatulipi. Hashtag wapi receipts. So we have a panel, and as the panel gets ready, because I know one of the panelists has to rush out, I'm going to just invite one question as we prepare for the panel. One question to either Dr. Arms or Diana or Alex, based on their presentations for earlier as we transition to the panel. Okay, there's one question there. Any question on that side? So I'm going to the lady here and the gentleman here. So can the mic quickly go? Just give us your question in less than 30 seconds, please. Just one question, one or a comment or a thought, one. Limit it to one. 1 point. There's a lady there, and then the gentleman here. We will have another plenary after.
Hello. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Adam Kibwana. Yes, my name is Adam Kibwana. I'm a legislative and procedural officer, Nairobi County Assembly. I'm also a consultant. Glad to see your team here. Bwana Dennis, NDI, we've worked together since 2020. So just a quick question. First, let me applaud the religious leader that I've seen here. For the longest time, we've had religious leaders just opening meetings with word of prayer and closure. We reduced them to that, kufungua na kufunga. But for the first time, they are part of the meetings. So that is really good. Second part, something we are so proud of is that we talk about this constitution being more of people-centered, out of public participation as a doctrine. Eh? But here's the challenge. For public participation, we go wrong because it is not enough unless there is civic education. So civic education is a precursor to public participation as it informs the decision and enables you to add value to the process. So my question now to our gentleman from World Bank.
Please, there's a reason why I'm specifically asking for a question for Arms or Diana.
Yes.
So it wasn't a question for them?
So this is a question now for Mark.
Okay, for Mark, we'll have the questions after, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
But allow me to float it because
float
it touches on conversation. Yeah. For all the developed jurisdictions, when you do capital projects, we do what we call environmental impact assessment.
Could you just shoot straight to the question?
So the question is this. Yes. I'm building a case. Yeah. So this is the thing. When you are taking loans, as now my fellow guarantors, do you get to hear our say? My only suggestion is, could you consider putting a clause on those application procedures that will allow the sovereign to come on board and give their views on tenability, sustainability, and even their thought on their loans?
Thank you. I think he's got it. Mark, please mark the question. I don't know that he's there. He's not there. Okay, we'll get someone else to answer that. The lady, is your question to Diana? A question, is there any reaction to Arms or the presentation by, if it's to the World Bank, just hold on a minute, we are going to have another plenary, because Mark is not even here. Is there a specific intervention for Diana or Arms? Yes? Please, to the point.
Okay, my name is Ibrahim Achera, and I have a question. So, do we have clear receipts or audits reports showing how much money is received and used through SHA, SGR, and eCitizen platform? Because as citizen, we hear of the billions involved, but rarely see where the money actually goes.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll ask either Arms or Diana to answer that. Yeah. No, you. Oh. Arms?
The question is on whether we have audits of SGR, SHA, and e-Citizen. E-Citizen, I am aware there are audits. Receipts. I think kwa hiyo aki Sheila nikubalie tu. I do not usurp power. I allow separation of power.
Thank you very much. To your question, do we have reports as far as SGR is concerned? Yes, there have been some special audits conducted in line with the terms of reference as per the various requests we get. For e-Citizen, yes, we have a report actually. It's most recent. It has been discussed in our media. As for SHA, as at now, I would say we don't have a signed report as at now. However, as you know, for the financial calendar, we are currently conducting our financial audits. So hopefully by 31st of December, as per our deadline, we shall be ready to issue reports as far as financial audit of SHA is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, Arms, you also have an intervention there. Yeah. Then we can transition to the next panel.
So I think there are two things here. One is, and I think Mchungaji was just reminding me here, that, I mean, anybody can give receipts, but that's not what we are looking for. Guys, there's a culture we have allowed in this country. I can only call it the utadu culture. Utadu. And that is a dangerous culture, because today you have more information about public finance than you had when some of us started this work. As Sheila said, 2 decades ago. I was an intern. She was already working. Anyway. And you have a lot of public information. But the question of why we are not utilizing that information, you go to the Office of the Auditor General, there are audit reports upon audit reports. You go to the Office of the Controller of Budget, you have reports, quarterly reports actually released every other quarter. I think my call is the more we have voices, and that has been our push within Budget Hub, can we have more people asking the questions around the audit reports when they are put up? Can we have more people looking at the budget, quarterly budget implementation reports? Because if none of us is looking at them and asking questions and asking what is Parliament doing about this, what are the courts doing about this, then it means that there is no demand, there is no pressure for that change to happen. I think for me that's very critical. And the spaces we have are immense. I just think about all the religious spaces that we spend every week. Think about all the mosques, all the churches, all the temples that people are in, all the shrines. If those are the questions, because this is where our duty bearers, our leaders, I'm no longer sure they bear the duty, but this is where they come to worship with us, and we can ask those critical questions. But the second one, we say we are a tech country, and it is a good thing that we are a tech country. But how much can we utilize tech to make this message simpler even for other people who may be offline, as it were? Whether you are thinking tech that can go into community radios, and I see my brother here from Bunge Mashinani, and all of us in the spaces where we are in, because this is a technical conversation, but it is also a political conversation. And politics is about numbers. If more people are asking questions about these things, then there is impetus to act. Let me just say something on public participation, and I'll close it. Public participation is as good as the input of the public will be processed and utilized. And I say this because after many years of doing public participation and perhaps contributing to the document of budget, I know very well that when you purpose we saw the finance committee actually give a response, line by line of everything that was said. Never mind they say we adopted, declined, at least something was done. And in an age of technology, and that's why I wanted to connect, I do not see why you cannot use technology to process even if you have 5,000 respondents. Google Forms, basic things that we can do to make sure that input. But remember, and this will be my very last point, unless there are people following up, unless there are people asking questions about what is going on, then all this becomes just a noise of a few. Arms can talk as much as one. Joyson can speak. Sheila can speak. Those ones we know. But if more and more of us are asking, because the implementation stage of our budget is the weakest point of public, where we have is the point where we have the weakest public participation. People are excited, oh, a borehole was allocated money, oh, a school was allocated money. But have you ever walked into that public school and asked questions about how is capitation being utilized? Kama hiyo ni kazi yao, wazazi wako huko na wale watoto wako huko. That dispensary, because all these things are allocated some public funds. Thank you very much. I stop there.
Thank you very much, Makofi kwa Arms.